2006 Toyota Matrix, remove and replace the steering wheel and the airbag. Make sure your wheel is centered. The airbag can explode if you don't disconnect the battery. Pop the hood. Disconnect the battery at the negative terminal. Yours will be different than this if you have the factory Toyota. It'll be a 10mm. Tuck the wire down somewhere where you know it's not going to fly up, then close that circuit. On the side of the wheel, you'll see a hole. And in that hole is a Torx. That's a Torx 30. This is a Torx 30. A Torx 25 will fit in that hole, but you'll very likely strip that. So don't use a Torx 25, use a Torx 30. If you don't have a socket, but you have a Torx 30 like as a screwdriver, it's going to be very difficult to turn this just using the screwdriver handle. So if you have a vice grip, put the vice grip on the screwdriver and then turn the handle of the screwdriver with the vice grip. I'm just going to use a 6-inch extension with the 1/4-inch drive ratchet. There it is. There's a hole on the other side of the steering wheel. Do the same thing there. That's also a Torx 30. Now, even though the screws are loose, you won't be able to remove the airbag until you get them up on these little ridges here. So you can try to get in there with the pliers. What I usually do is just turn the screw and try to dislodge the screw completely and get it out of my way. And then you'll know it's out if you can pull this up, which I can. See? So I'll do that on the other side now. If the airbag doesn't want to come out and it's doing this, that means you haven't got the screw out. Once you have both the screws either dislodged or in those little ridges, you'll be able to just pull the airbag out very easily. If it's resisting you in any way, it's because those screws aren't in the right place. So you'll bring the airbag back like this. That's how that screw ended up there when I was just trying to get it out of the way. But I'll show you ideally where it's supposed to go. Ideally it's supposed to go like this. And these little ridges are supposed to catch on there. See how that screw has that unique design? It doesn't really work that well though, so just pull them out. Again, it has to have been at least 90 seconds since you disconnected the battery before you go fiddling with any of this stuff. These are the electrical connections for the airbag. You can see there's like a little arrow, teardrop shaped thing here, right here. Okay, so you get under there with a pick or with your fingernail or something, and you pick this up. Okay. And same thing on this one. Once these little yellow safety deals are up, you can just pop that off. Here's the airbag. Store it in this position. Don't store it face down. It has explosives in it, so don't fool around with it. Now you'll see this, so we're ready to remove the steering wheel. If you have cruise control, you have to disconnect the electrical supply for the cruise control. That's going to be just pressing up on this bottom part there, and it easy comes out. This part back here is called the clock spring. It'll slightly move a little bit. That's the power supply for the airbag and for the cruise control and whatever other buttons might be on the steering wheel. Don't fiddle with that clock spring, just don't move it. When you take the steering wheel out, it'll be loose, and if you touch it, it'll move. Just don't touch it. These are your horn contacts. You'll see corresponding copper contacts on the back of the airbag. If you're having a problem with your horn, that's where you would want to be looking around those. All this, not this is going to stay on the vehicle, but the rest of this is going to come out with the steering wheel. So we need a 19mm socket, 6-point, 1/2-inch drive, big old long breaker bar. This is a manual transmission, so it's not going to lock out. I can keep turning the wheel. If you have an automatic, it should lock out, so turn it and then have it lock out. And then still use your leg or another person to help you to hold it. Don't just use the lock. So get your legs in there. Turn counterclockwise as normal. There it is. Okay, so not too bad. So there you have it. We got the nut off. Now at this point, I'm going to make some match marks. Make sure your wheel is centered. I'm going to make a match mark right here to here, and then all along the threads. At this point, if you have a steering wheel puller, thread into here and here, and then put the opposing bolt on the steering wheel puller here, and turn it, and it will bring this out. I've found from being at junkyards a lot that you can usually bang these Toyotas off by hand. So let's see if I can do it on this one. Just don't knock your turn signals off or anything. Just loosen it up a little that way, and then come under. There it is. That was a piece of cake. That was one of the easiest ones I've ever done, I think. Okay, so now you saw that little clock spring move. You saw the clock spring move just a little bit. You see this thing is very easy to turn. Since I saw it move, I know it didn't move much, so I can just line it back up down here with those little arrows, right? See those little arrows? So it's good. If something weird happened, if you had your wheel off and then somebody went in your car for something and they knocked it, and then you came in and it was at the 6 o'clock position or something, and you don't know if it got there from going clockwise or from going counterclockwise, reset it. All you have to do is follow the instructions that are on here. The reason is because this is the power supply for your airbag, and if there's a break in continuity, it'll throw you up a SRS light. On these Matrixes and Corollas, apparently these clock springs fail a fair amount, and they'll throw a persistent or intermittent SRS light. Take this wheel off because I want to see if it's exactly identical to the RAV4 steering wheel. This is a RAV4, first generation RAV4 steering wheel, and I think it's actually the same for the early second generation, like 2001 to 2003. This is a 98 to 2000 RAV4 steering wheel, and they look very similar. This is a little different right here, but that's not a substantial difference. The shape and all looks the same, and so I'm going to take this cruise control out and this trim off. Once you have those two fasteners out and the ground off, this cruise control will just pop right out. Then we get the trim piece off, that one and that one. With those two fasteners out, this trim piece will just come off. So let's look. Matrix, RAV4. Alright, so they are not interchangeable. We have a problem. Look at the size of this, and then look at the size of this. This is much smaller, and the clock spring goes right up around this. So this RAV4 steering wheel is not going to fit inside that clock spring. So I'm not going to be able to put this on as a temporary install, but that's okay. They are otherwise identical as far as the cuts that you'd need on a wrap and all. So if you find a nice wrap for a RAV4, you can use it on a Matrix, or if you find a nice wrap for a Matrix, you can use it on a RAV4. In the past, I put a IS 300 steering wheel on a RAV4, and I didn't have to change the clock spring. The larger steering wheel from the RAV4 will not fit in the smaller hole on the Matrix unless you replace the clock spring. But then you'd have to replace the airbag too, because the clock spring's got that different harness on it, because the RAV4 and the Matrix don't have the same airbag. So just don't bother with that. See what I mean? See how thick that is? This is the RAV4 steering wheel, and it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit in that hole for the clock spring on the Matrix. Doesn't fit. No go. Now I'll put the matrix steering wheel back on. Just try to get those electrical through without making too much ruckus at the clock spring. Okay, and then use your match marks, and it's right back on. Now we'll get that nut back on. Plug the cruise control back in. We'll torque down this nut now. Torque is 37 foot-pounds. Make sure you resist it with your legs or have somebody else hold the steering wheel. There it is. Put the airbag back on now. You can see you don't have a whole lot of slack. You don't have a whole lot of slack, but they are color coded, so black and black. Press it in, and then make sure you push this yellow lock in there, and it should be in there real well. Orange one. Which is kind of funny because this is orange and that's red, but it's not black. So get that in there and press that in. So it's kind of a two-stage. You'll hear it click when it first gets in, and then you press this in as well. So that's in there. That's good. Make sure you didn't leave anything inside that area, and you can just put this airbag right back on. It'll slide in real well. And now we'll go on the sides with the torque screws. Torque on the torque screws is 78 inch-pounds. When you get these fasteners, you'll have to kind of push them to get them past that plastic, and then you can start turning them in by hand, then torque them down. Alright, torque screws are back in. Now we can reconnect the battery. Tack it down well. Okay, now key in the ignition. We'll be looking for the SRS light. It's on and we want it to go off. There it is. So that looks good, so I'll start her up. Looks good, no light. Good luck with your repair.